que medo que me achasses feia. Acordei tremendo, deitada na areia, mas logo os teus olhos disseram que não, e o sol penetrou no meu coração. Mas logo os teus olhos disseram que não, e o sol penetrou no meu coração. Vi depois numa rocha uma cruz, e o teu barco negro dançava na luz. Vi teu braço acenando entre as velas já soltas. Dizem as velhas da praia que não volta.
And it's restaurant.
São loucas. Eu sei, meu amor, que nem chegaste a partir, mas tudo em meu redor me diz que estás sempre comigo. Eu sei, meu amor, que nem chegaste a partir, mas tudo em meu redor me diz que estás sempre comigo. O vento que lança areia aos vidros, na água que canta, no fogo mortiço, no calor do leito, nos bancos vazios, dentro do meu peito estás sempre comigo. No calor do leito, nos bancos vazios, dentro do meu peito estás sempre comigo. Que nem chegaste a partir, mas tudo em meu redor me diz que estás sempre comigo. Eu sei, meu amor, que nem chegaste a partir, mas tudo em meu redor me diz que estás sempre.
Papa? You see Papa? Look.
That's great. Yeah.
Comigo.
You know what? After Papa,
He said I'm sappy.
who's that?
He said it is it.
That great grandma?
She said
Do you want to go see great grandma?
No, so mama.
Say hello. Anna. That's right there.
it's hungry. Oh, I mean, it's other people. You know, not a million chances I'm a part of
She did a great job, didn't she?
most of it's over. It's all said and done. Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you. My goodness. So I can say it's about 220.
Anna.
De folhas flores, frutas doces. Vê-se vês terras de Espanha, areias de Portugal. Olhar sai de
If we could get rid of, if we could just
She's picky. She want another one, huh?
we'll get the blues after we're all done. Is that on your ear?
You can go back to Bubba.
See you later.
E aqui te faço uma ajuda. Que eu te levo à sacristia. Não foi Deus que foi servir.
That's good. Okay. That's great.
Quando o vento não engolia e o céu mar prolongava, lá proa do outro veleiro velava outro marinheiro que estando triste cantava. Que estando triste cantava. Que lindeza tamanha no chão, no vale de folhas, flores, frutas, doiro.
And the next grandma to be.
You too. She just has No. She's in college. I think we're do you want to taste this?
Professor. Toka. Với Toka. Okay.
She understands too. I mean, she really does. But everything, if you ask her any question, he needs a number for an answer, and that's what they'll get.
Things that you can eat are pieces of fruit that have fallen naturally from there.
Papa. But the general tall chicken. And this Greg's special tofu and vegetable. Chicken noodle.
Well, what I was thinking of was,
Because a lot of my students were,
I sort of would have to have,
and I was like, I know who.
Green beans. Pang shrimp.
We have 2 cakes here, and this one I don't know how he's going to blow out in one cake, which you have not seen yet, which Rick brought in, has happy birthday, I think I have to look at it, happy birthday, John, Dad, Papa John, and Papa, which I think are all of his names. So, at any rate, John, I think we need to sing happy birthday first. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear John. Happy birthday to you.
well, thank you very much. This was indeed a surprise, I'll promise you that.
And Courtney had that cake made actually, and I think it's wonderful with that picture. That was Greg's idea to have that picture on there. I think it's wonderful.
It is. It's beautiful.
Oh wow.
Young, take a deep breath first. Take a deep breath first.
You're going to start. Oh my God.
This is not a back bed. This is not a back bed. Sorry.
That's a lot to blow up.
All right, from now on we'll put 6.
They stamped it off. They stamped it on the cake. Yeah, there was
Yes.
I needed a basket.
Right. As soon as they're similar.
Right. Do you want to
Sure.
do that to begin then?
Anna, where's Catherine? Where's Catherine?
And Anna will be in every second frame, right?
Thank you. Thank you. Good. Good. Thank you.
I'm eating their mother.
Oh, Eva's found a cake.
Yeah.
And what did you say?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, you got Ricky.
I don't have anything.
You don't have anything.
And she didn't.
Randy, oh, you
I think that's it.
Hey, Randy, I'm leaving you.
Everything has been I'm afraid I've eaten.
Did you bring it?
That's Dad's shoulder. That's Dad's.
Or did you make it?
And I did.
You're
Oh,
right.
yeah, she made it.
I'd like to share a fond memory from Grandma Beaker's, and then I'd like to mention a few that I've had being his eldest son. And then if anyone else would like to share, that would be great. So Dad, this is Grandma's. It says, heartiest congratulations on your 60th, John. Recollections of the past years bring many things to mind. One outstanding memory is foremost back in the 70s. You were taking your family to Guam, and we moved to Winston-Salem to the parsonage on Aquilon. I will miss you all, including the grandsons. One night the phone rang at 2 in the morning. What's the matter with you guys? You sound sleepy. I was overjoyed. You had built a shortwave radio set from the Heath kit, contacted a ham radio operator in LA who phone patched you through to us. And it says, you also made possible an unforgettable bus tour through Europe, and who could ever forget cruising the Nile in Egypt. Best wishes, John. May the Lord bless you in the years ahead. From Mom Beavis. Thank you. I've got so many that I'd like to share, but as a child, and I've only seen pictures, but I know that it probably happened, was I used to like to wear Dad's Navy cap. And I've got some very fond pictures that I've seen of me sleeping on Dad's chest, laying on a couch with his Navy cap on as a toddler. And then an important one is back in September of 1980 when I had my open heart surgery. I was a very scared little boy when I had to have the surgery. But knowing that you were there, Dad, it wasn't so bad. You took a lot of the scare away, and you made me feel at ease around the other doctors. And I really appreciate that, and I'll never forget that. And I guess the most important one happened 33 years ago when you and Mom adopted me. If y'all wouldn't have adopted me, I may not know what a good life could have been. And I'm extremely happy and proud to call you my dad. And I hope that we have many good years ahead of us.
So, you know, that when I was reflecting on the last 33 or 32, almost 33 years with Dad, it was interesting because I started categorizing a lot of different things, different ways, and if I had to kind of sum up my experience, I'd say that one thing that I always felt confident of was Dad's interest in me as a person and this desire to spend personal time with me. Some of my fondest memories growing up were trips that we took, most often to see different Philadelphia sports teams. Being born in Philadelphia and growing up here, there wasn't a way to be involved in professional sports, but we would travel down to Atlanta oftentimes to see the Braves play the Phillies or the Hawks play the 76ers. And we went down one time to see the Sixers play. I remember it was Dr. J's last year in the pros. And he was hurt, so he didn't get to make the trip. And we went to the game, and I don't remember the score of the game. I don't remember who won or anything like that. But I remember we stuck around for like an hour and a half after the game was over to let the players go back in the locker room to shower, to change, just to wait for them to come back through. It was the Omni on their way to the bus, so we could get their autographs. And I got a chance to talk with Maurice Cheeks and get Moses Malone's autograph. And there are a couple other guys who I don't know who they were, but they signed the paper I gave them as well. And we then walked back to our hotel, which was right beside the Omni, and had a chance. That was the first time I'd seen a telephone in a bathroom. These were all key things that I remember. Dad took an interest in my love of soccer. I played soccer in high school, and we went down to Clemson one year to see the NCAA championship game. He had his 87 Super at the time, and I was 15, had my learner's permit, and Dad decided this would be a good opportunity for me to learn how to drive a stick shift. And after I took the car from 5th to 2nd gear downshifting, I'm not sure he felt the same way, but we didn't even sit together that game. He dropped me off to go find seats while he parked the car, and we didn't find each other. And so we sat apart for the entire game. But it was a great memory because we spent the day together. Another thing that I remember outside of sports was spending time with Dad talking about investments and commodities and things of that nature. And when I was in high school, I think I was a junior, there was a while where we'd sit up at night after he had done what he needed to do and I'd done some of my homework, talking about hog futures and just crazy, the futures market, talking about the market and what was going on in world events and how it impacted the market. And I even had positions in the market and would call my broker in between classes. And I remember one day, my junior year, between my break at 10 o'clock and like 6th or 7th period, my positions had gone from limit up to limit down, which was a swing of $7,500. That was always a real joy for me to sit down and talk with Dad. And even now, I was thinking as I started my own business, and I'm in somewhat of a precarious situation with the market being as it is, and in a lot of ways, just making by. That has the same enthusiasm for reading and critiquing the quarterly newsletter that we put out as he did for the essays that I wrote for my college applications. So, it's kind of hard to put into words what all those experiences mean and what they have taught you, but I know that I've always felt as if I was significant to him, and that has helped me through difficult times, not only in our relationship, as all relationships have, but in difficult times in other areas of my life as well. So Dad, thank you. Appreciate your investment in my life and now your investment in my family's life, and I just want to let you know that I love you very much.
My dad's youngest brother, Bobby, unfortunately is not here. I'm not going to stand over there. I'm crazy. So apparently I'm the one to be reading his account, which is good because actually I've been in contact with him quite a bit. So let me read, if not paraphrase, what Bobby says. And for lack of those, or for those of you that may not know him, he's more or less the prankster of the family. So some of the things that he says here will be tongue in cheek. Hello, John. Here's a brief note written by your little brother, a title that never changes, as it would seem. My purpose is to encourage you as you enter into your sunset years. To remind you of some of the more impacting events in my life and where your participation was very significant. The first item that I'll mention was your generous act of introducing me to lard. That's right, lard. We were still in the old apartments, which means I was probably around the tender and very impressionable age of maybe 5. You and my other brother, Stephen, assured me prior to making your batch of popcorn, which is still a Sunday tradition, you assured me that lard was perhaps the single most tastiest item on the planet. So much so, in fact, that your mother had forbade you and Stephen from eating it, lard, because had that rule not been made, clearly that 5-pound container would be eaten up just on the spot. But since Bobby was so much younger, the family orders never trickled. So you had asked him if your mother had ordered Bobby or him to not eat any, and being the naturally honest child that I am, I answered no. I'm reading in first person here. So you then assured me with great excitement that your one taste would be the Epicurean experience of his lifetime, which it most certainly was. Moving on. It was within that time period that you literally attached a rope and lifted me from the ground to the roof, causing our mother the immediate and extreme concern that A, the rapture was happening, and B, it was passing her. Let's move on first, shall we? I can go into some details of some of your more darkly sinister items, which shall remain nameless for the sake of propriety. However, you did send things to our sister Mary via mail from Edmonton while you were attending medical school. That's all it says, so at some point I'll have to find out exactly what Wool has sent. Moving on though. There have been some great times though, many of them. Here are just a few. In the frequent times that I've been your guest at your beautiful home, when I first started to travel over 20 years ago, the great times that we've spent together on the water and in the cabin. And furthermore, you've helped me numerous times with urgent computing issues. And for that, you will have my eternal and continued gratitude. And for all the good fortune that we've had to be able to communicate in real time, almost every day. So let me bring this to a conclusion by mentioning that I consider myself blessed. Blessed to be your younger brother. I will not forget the many expressions of your generosity. And I could not be more pleased that technology and circumstances have brought us together in these past few years. It's great to be able to chat with you at just about any time. And now not only to be your brother, but also your friend. Sincerely, Brother Bob.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Courtney. I'm a daughter-in-law to, this is my honey right here. And I just had a few things I wanted to share with you guys about how John has been, a father figure to me through the years. And I had the pleasure of knowing him since high school, hanging out at their house some, eating many dinners and whatnot. One of the first gifts that John bought me was a tire pressure gauge. You think a tire pressure gauge, I mean, for a girl, why not a gift like soaps and lotions from Crabtree and Evelyn or something like that? But it's a tire pressure gauge. But I think what he was trying to show me through this, or what he was trying to teach me, was just about proper car maintenance and safety, you know, like a father would. And you just have to know, at the time I had this white, hoopty Civic with one blue door, and the tires were all bought at separate times, and they were all probably bald. But he was, you know, trying to look after me and say, hey, you know, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. Another nice discovery under John's tutelage, and this happened just a few months ago, was I found that fresh apricots could be quite tasty. I'd never tried them before, and I know that's a silly thing, but, you know, I found out about this from him. He has a love for apricots, so found out about those. Probably a not so nice discovery was Lancer's Rosé. I don't know if any of you know about this Portuguese wine, pseudo wine spritzer type concoction that's out that probably should never be sold again, but he loves it. So go John. But seriously though, over the years, I've learned about investment strategies through him and Fibonacci marketing indicators, you know, going short with the bears and going long with the bulls, and all that other stock mumbo jumbo. I can talk only semi-intelligently about it. And I learned that from him. But before I knew about any of this, it was John who taught me how to budget. You know, I was 21 and out on my own for the first time, and here he comes with this little black ledger, you know, to teach me how to budget and be fiscally responsible. I really had no idea about that before, and even though you know, he lovingly pushed me along and helped me to develop a realistic budget. Of course, my idea of a realistic budget was $20 for clothing per month in the beginning, which, you know, probably wasn't a really great thing for a girl in her early 20s. You know, you usually don't know that. Anyway, but, you know, through all that, he taught me and put up with my occasional accounting mishaps. But he was a gracious auditor, I have to say. And as if he hadn't already done enough, he took me under his wing and made my education a priority. Showed me what success is, and provided me with the necessary tools to achieve that, from school in Virginia to North Carolina. And as a result, you know, I became more self-confident as a young woman and learned that I can be successful at anything. And to not accept mediocrity. And I think he had that as his plan for me all along. Just to providing me with the ability to always know that things can not only be different, but that they can be better. So, thank you.
Sat and wrote this letter to you, but I was just going to summarize it, but I think I'm going to read it to you because if I do, I'm going to forget some of the things I wrote, and they all mean a lot to me. It says that, John, you have been there for me through the good times and the bad times, and I really appreciate everything that you have done for me. I could never forget that Thanksgiving Day when I met my new family in Guam. I was so nervous and I was scared, but you made me feel welcome. You put up with me during my teenagers years of not wanting to go to school because of my French class, and learning to drive, and yelling at you in the shower because Greg was choking on his vitamins. I remember when you were on call and you took me to the Naval Hospital to observe surgery. This made a great impression on me when I saw you push the syringe of sodium pentothal and let me squeeze the breathing bag. That was when I knew I wanted to do something like that. I felt so special when you brought me my first calculator becoming the only kid in my class to have a calculator on Guam. I want to express my great thanks to you for extending your military stay on Guam so that I can finish my senior year and I wouldn't have to live with another new family. I also remember when I was so excited that you invited me to come to the United States to stay with you and go to the college. And I remember you picking me up at CPCC after work whenever you could, so I wouldn't have to ride the bus home, especially during winter time when I was so cold at the bus stop. I will always remember my first trip to Disney World with you and the family and riding the unforgettable Space Mountain. You were always there at all my graduations, like high school, nursing, and anesthesia. You were even there for my honor society induction in nursing school. I remember you helping me get my first car and reminding me numerous times to get my oil changed and my tires. I needed your approval of Bob before marrying him because you are a very wise man and a father figure to me. I remember our mother-father talk we had before I got married and you walking me to the altar. You always encouraged me to go ahead with anesthesia even when I had second thoughts because I was a newlywed. You helped me learn to budget, which I have become the master at all, especially as a single mom. You have greatly influenced me on how to be a good parent, a parent like you. I appreciate all your advice, especially when I was mad at Bob, and I came to the office and talked to you about, and you told me that the best advice I ever heard during our marriage. You said, Bob is very good to you and the girls. Nobody is perfect. You will never know how good you have it until you don't have it. You were absolutely right. Now that Bob is gone, you have stepped in and helped out, not just as a father to me, but also as a father and a grandfather to Lauren and Catherine. You're always there for me and my girls. Thank God for you, your beeper, and now your cell phone. It gives me great comfort knowing that Lauren, Catherine, and I can reach you anytime we need, whether it is big or small. I pray that you have many more birthdays and good health to come. Happy birthday, John.
And I am Papa John's granddaughter. And I've only known Papa John for 13 years, but there's a lot of things in 13 years that were really special. And I just wanted, well, I mean, these are very serious things. I wrote a poem, and they're not very serious things, but, and I wasn't actually planning on reading them out loud. So a lot of things you guys won't understand. So, the day I was born, I heard that you cried, but I never meant to bring tears to your eyes. And since that day, you've been by my side, and we've laughed together, talked together, and we've mourned and we've cried. Sad times you've been there, frightening and all, you've helped me stand up when I started to fall. Like when Dad died, he helped us all out, and made me more confident in a time plagued with doubt. And when my bathing suit snapped, I thought I would die, but you gave me your shirt before I could cry. But so also the good, you've been there too, and I can't count the smiles that I've shared with you. Like our trip to Canada and the lumberjack breakfast that I had. I wasted half your money, but you laughed more than got mad. And that trip that we took to the beach and the nights that we spent on the sand, telling each other pointless, ridiculous stories because reality seemed too bland. But another year for you is turning. All past years I wish I could revive because in my memories the years with you are clear and still alive. I wish those years weren't spent so fast that we could turn back time and that we could relive the years of choice that aging was a crime. But we can make the best of it, have more fun as we go, and keep the present in our minds and keep the past in our soul. And the other day, I found this quote, and I think that it should fit. It's better to be over the hill then buried under it.
From Sister Mary, she's the youngest sister and fourth of the 5 children. She's also my godmother. But she writes, 60 years of John Snyder. That's what she writes. I came into this story when John was 7. Mother remembered him bouncing me downstairs, twirling me around on the grass. Nice, gentle stuff like that. I remember being lifted up by my stiffened hands down to my side or by my neck. Also being hit with my own hands with John's help. By the way, Julian, who is her son, has a similar move now. I don't know where he got it. When John went to the University of Alberta, a highlight of my life was going by train to Edmonton and being entertained by him and Stephen, that's child number 2, sometimes. I'd go to classes with him Saturday morning and bowling once. It was so exciting being with my big brother. Then I stayed with John and Ruth my first year of university. I remember John phoning home every other night when he was on call just to hear us talk. Certainly not to talk to us. I guess it was a one-way conversation, Dad. Oh yeah, those are very one-way, one-sided conversations. My visits to Philadelphia, then later North Carolina, one neat memory is being paralyzed for a minute, just to see what it was like. I guess that's another story as well. Holidays in Tortola, swimming with the fish, tearing all around the island in that little Jeep. Family reunions, weddings, and funerals. John made me special drinks, ate deli food late at night, interpreted doctors, and then hugged me when Dominic died. He also encouraged Julian in the pursuit of medicine and science. A little sister adores and totally trusts her big brother. I was starry-eyed then when he paid attention to me, and I've never lost that. I couldn't ask for a better big brother. All the movie stars I've liked remind me of John. Sean Connery, Jack Nicholson, and the local RCMP officer that she does volunteer work with. Happy birthday, John. I love you. Mary.
I wrote a letter, but I'm going to read it / paraphrase it. But happy birthday, Papa John. I wanted to tell you that I love you, and I love spending every minute with you, even if it is debating over the obvious superiority of the female gender. I love eating with you. I love spending time at church with you. I like laughing with you. I like the good times and the bad times. You're always there for me. You always pull through, and you always give more than or needed, especially during sorry guys. When my son's up, you're always there. You support me, you talk to me to make sure I'm okay. And when good daddy died, you're always there. Sorry. But another note. Thank you for everything. Thank you for your headaches about me and your concerns for my driving, because it really was. But I don't know if anyone whose parents, let alone grandparents, take them to a BMW driving school. And like sacrifice their weekends, wake up early Saturday morning. And I know that probably has saved my life or my health many times already, because I figured out I don't have ABS on my car. And I want to thank you for spending time with me on vacations and trips that you really mean a lot to me. Like silly things like spitting a beetle nut on the beach and pull out, or silly with Catherine fire coral. And thank you for putting up with me when I tug on your fin, because I want to follow the dive master and not wander off miles away. And thanks for fun times in Israel and the Caribbean with the entire family, like who says goat cheese is not fun.
I do.
And thanks for going 3 mile ride on slippery gravel to a waterfall miles away. And let's see. I want to make sure I say everything. Thank you for New York City and all the money you spent, because that is a very expensive city. And the time and planning you spent into that, it's really appreciated. And I loved every minute, and I'm sorry I dragged you through the art museum and every corner of it. And thanks for Riddle Beach and the trailer park bonfire we went to on New Year's Eve. That was fun. Thank you for your concerns about my future in education, and I'm always willing to find other career options just so I'm not limited. And I know that you have influenced my life in every way possible. And I know I wouldn't be who I am without you. But thank you for loving me as if I was your blood. And as far as I'm concerned, you all are my blood. So thank you.
I think I need to say something. Got to start out by saying I'm awfully proud of my family. Starting with my husband. But after just about 37 years of marriage, believe it, I thought maybe we would just take a couple snapshots of those 37 years. And I do need some notes because I can't really remember. But these are just some of the things that I think of. Life with John Snyder is not boring. It may be a number of things, but it is not boring. And so, just a few examples of these snapshots were such as hearing of the thousands counted fruit flies in genetics class that went flying with a sneeze that could not be controlled. Those were the days when we talked and talked at university. Listening to the tales of atomic bomb sales that he made while he was selling books for the Southeastern Company or Southwestern Company in the South. Yes, this John Snyder has sold atomic bombs, among other things. He's also sold operations. Unsuspecting individuals at that time. Laughing at the necessity of disrobing when the necessity of disrobing became apparent, when he was teaching me how to fly fish. And the hook got caught at the bottom of the stream, and he had to go retrieve it. We were too poor to leave it there. Being amazed at the frozen pop in the cupboard of our kitchen about the second year after we were married. And then going through that year when the house was condemned 3 times by the health department. And finding a place for the 4 of us to stay. His younger brother and sister were living with us at the time. Those were the years. Those were snapshots that we cannot forget. Experiencing a tremendous amount of pride at his response when we got a phone call from his younger brother Bobby, who had just totaled the car on which we had no insurance because it wasn't worthy of insurance. We were too poor to get it. Watching him fall asleep, literally, at the dinner table when he was an intern on call 24 hours every other night, and would come home and want to be a part of the family and eat dinner together, but literally fall asleep at the table. Watching him take care of our first 2 who were very close together, but taking an active role as a father, even when he was doing the work of a resident, but baths, walks, playtime, reading books, talking on the phone with Rick to Grandma, church, mealtime, he was always involved. Bike riding on Guam with the boys, sometimes Greg on his back, Randy in front, I think that was right, Rick on his own bike, and sometimes maybe all three on your bike. I think it was all three, one in back, one in front, and one on his back. Taking down the antenna in an oncoming, the big radio antenna in an oncoming typhoon wind, thinking he was going to get blown down with it. Being so determined not to inflate that life vest in those early years of scuba diving that you would rather literally drown than inflate the vest. And end up chucking what you had scavenged off of the old ship down there because you knew you weren't going to get back alive. Getting rid of longer than expected visitors on Guam. Did they have 5 kids? I can't remember if it was 4 or 5 who seemed to simply plan to stay forever. Remember? And John very graciously, but firmly and generously moved them on with a whole carload of groceries, spending hours on the ham radio, patching through calls from people on the ship to people back home. He even has a plaque for one of those efforts. Working tirelessly in triage when Vietnam fell, when Saigon fell, and we had shiploads and plane loads of Vietnamese coming. And John worked at the plane, with the planes coming in. 12 hours, 7 days a week. 12 hours, 7 days a week, no break. And his CEO said, when I tell you, you'll get a break. He was called a Vietnamese lover by that same CEO. And that same CEO is the reason why we are not in the military today. Dealing with the demise of a huge, one-of-a-kind, 100 hours worth of work antenna that was on its way up in place in our front yard in Providence Plantation, and when it was almost up, it crashed down and absolutely broke, never to be replaced again. Laughing on the train in Canada, so hard that the tears came. What was he reading? Do you remember?
Yeah.
I do.
What?
That veterinarian book.
Yeah.
Reading about animals. I couldn't remember the name of it.
I don't know the name of the book. I just remember the story.
Right. Providing education for many young people, some of whom will never know that it was you that helped them along. Inviting your parents to come to North Carolina to live when they really didn't feel that they had a place to go at that particular point in their lives. Making undesirable comments about 2 little puppies that we added to the family, and yet looking out the window and watching you walk through the snow with one in each pocket. Protecting them. Thinking that another puppy we got was one of the kittens we had pinned up together. Telling the vet, no, that's not his name. Because we only called that puppy Puppy, and you never did remember the name of that dog. Fighting to save the trees. Because of you, you got the community together, we've got underground wiring, and we have our trees in our driveway. Watching you completely melt with babies, especially your own and your grandchildren, from your own children to your grandchildren. What a legacy. And they know it. They love you. And having you put up with me for all these years. Pretty special guy. Thank you.
things call for a little explanation, I think. When, indeed, we were very poor when we were growing up, and I had a bad case of acne, and the only thing that could help it was the sun. And in Alberta, we had sun for about 3 months out of the year. So I would go up on top of the flat roof. It was an apartment with a flat roof to sunbathe. And Stephen would come up there with me. About the same time, we were starting into a Boy Scouts type of thing. And our 3-year-old brother wanted to come up and join us. Well, he couldn't climb on the front step rail in order to jump up onto the roof. So we concocted the right knot. And one went down and put it under his arms and held it tight, and then came back up and we pulled him up. It just happened to be in front of the kitchen window. And that's entirely true. Mother thought Jesus had come and she wasn't going. She ran outside the door thinking the roof was perhaps keeping her in. And said, "Jesus, take me too." That's all true, I promise you. And the bit about Mary being paralyzed, indeed, that's true. When I was a first-year resident, she was coming through on her honeymoon, and she wanted to know what it would be like to experience a powerful drug. So I drew up 10 milligrams only of succinylcholine in a 27 gauge, in a tuberculin syringe with a 27 gauge needle, and gave it to her in a hand vein. And she was sitting on a gurney, and about the time I gave it, I was thinking, now, when did she last eat? And I was a little nervous. But she sat there and said, "No, nothing's happening." About that time, she fell back, her eyes closed. She was very impressed. So she wanted her husband to have the same experience. So she talked him into it. I gave him only 5 milligrams. It's amazing. We think the normal dose is 100 milligrams, and sometimes it, quote, doesn't work. Give it to a live person and they'll experience a different thing. One of the things, though, that, when you look back, especially when you get some maturity on you, you certainly look back and value the friendships you made, and at this point, I think I could look back at all the family, and although there's parents and grandparents, relationships, you can also look at them as friendships in many respects, because I think when you, as you get older, you realize you have a lot of things in common. That age doesn't make a lot of difference. And so I really do value the good friends that I have within the family, the times that Rick and I, we went up to the far north and spent 2 weeks up in Frobisher Bay and way high north, hunting seals and things like that. Randy and I went to see the Phillies, or the Eagles Redskins game in Philadelphia. The 5 seconds to go, Redskins are in the Eagle 5. Would they get in? Really stuff that you look back on and you just say, boy, that was one of the best times of my life. You don't realize it at the time, though. And I think as you get older, you do realize that some of these things now that you're experiencing, like with Anna, are some of the best times in your life, but now you realize it and you appreciate it more. Having the opportunity to have both Ava and Courtney in our lives, both of them who were in positions in their life where they needed a helping hand, but also both of them who then seized that and ran with the ball and took every opportunity to take advantage of the opportunity that was afforded to them. Both of them now, Courtney with her interior design, Ava in anesthesia, both of them have reached levels that I'm sure they never thought they would have. But the point is, in Ava's case, of all the girls in her class, probably no one else has done what she's done. They lived with Navy people, but never took advantage of it. So I'm very grateful to have both some of these para family, especially Courtney. I mean, she's a daughter-in-law, but she's a daughter too. When Lauren and Catherine were born, we still had Greg at home, and it was a little different than when Anna was born, because with Anna now, I mean, sort of the grandparent mindset. Lauren and Catherine, though, were still fighting with Greg. And we didn't really weren't in the grandparent mindset. So it's really been since Bob died that we've gotten more involved, I think, from the point of view of taking some responsibility, or trying to take some responsibility, and then really getting to know the girls and appreciate them for who they are with their interests and their desires and whatnot. And I'm very grateful that I recognize how special it is to have these kinds of special relationships with Lauren and Catherine and not have to look back on it years later and say, my, I wish I would have known how special it was. Because it is special. I mean, Catherine and I did a trip to Niagara Falls and then Vancouver and whatnot. Lauren would have come too, except she was in Egypt with Ava and Ruth. Each one of us did our own things. Catherine and I are going to go to Colorado this June. Lauren can come too, except she's going to be in Spain. It is true that Lauren tugged on my fins when we were scuba diving. She wanted to follow the dive guide very closely and was a little uncomfortable sort of veering off on her own. What I especially remember, though, is the first, her very first dive. We got in the water and she said, how deep is it? I said, they said it's 85 feet. Oh, I'm not going past 40. Well, you have to if you're going to follow the group. Oh, I'm not going to do it. Well, I didn't argue with her. So we started going down. We got to the bottom. I looked at my depth gauge and it's 85 feet. So I went over to her and said, she didn't believe it. She looked up, the boat's right there. So she went over to the dive guide, and only then I think did she believe that she was where she was as deep as she was. But Lauren, after her second dive, was as good as most people after their 100th. It took Ava a week to get to the stage where Lauren was. In fact, I was so close to Ava with diving on Bon Air that somebody asked if they could take a picture of me and my wife with Ava being my wife. Because I couldn't leave her side for a second. She would get under the boat and rise too fast and hit her head. But those are all fun times, and I really value those. And then for some of the oldest and very most loyal and dearest partners, Dr. Lee and Dr. Chen and Dr. Lennon, I mean, we've been through just a lifetime of practice together, and having good partners that you can trust implicitly to do the right thing. It's just, I mean, you can't put a value on that. And I just so much value the senior partners that joined our group. Dr. Scharf probably and Williford were sort of the last of the old school, I guess is the best way to say it, where loyalty and doing the job right and long-term thinking were important, as opposed to short-term thinking and a me-first attitude. But Carl Scharf, he's not here tonight, but Joni is. Just a wonderful, wonderful guy. So I'm very grateful. Believe me, this was a surprise. I spent 3 or 4 hours Tong this morning working on his stereo. Still had no clue. But before I finish, I do want to say that I appreciate someone putting up with me for 37 years. You know, the way we met was I called her to cry on her shoulder.
That's cool.
So I showed her a sort of, not a poem, but a little something I had written to her cousin to try to induce her to come back. Asked her if she thought this was, a good thing to send. Anyway, after knowing her for about a year, I figured, I'm really comfortable just spending time with her. I wonder if that's maybe what you should look for in a wife, rather than somebody that, your heart goes pitter-patter and then they dump you. So we went together for a year, and I was in medical school and she was a nursing student, and when I decided to propose, I drove out to a lake, and it's the only lake near Edmonton. It's really sort of poor place. There was only body water fairly nearby. And we were standing by the lake, and I was getting up my nerve to propose, and we were standing by the lake, and I was holding her, and I'm just getting up my nerve. And she says, "Why is your heart rate 140? I mean, you know, she shot me in the saddle. So I don't know what I said. So on the way back to the car, I'm trying to get my nerve up again, and I guess I'm not paying too careful attention to where I'm going. And there's this sort of culvert, a ditch with high grass to hide it. And I stumbled and I fell and I got all wet and muddy and dumped it. And I still haven't asked her. So we get back in my little old small Volkswagen Beetle and finally ask her, you know, covered with mud, whether she'll marry me. Well, she said yes. It has been interesting, there's no question about it. But, you know, something must have worked pretty well to have been able to have produced such a wonderful family and be able to attract such wonderful parafamily and generate such wonderful daughters-in-law. I mean, we were talking, Misty's not a daughter-in-law yet, she's going to be, but the daughters-in-law that have been daughters-in-law for 4 or 5 years, we couldn't ask for anything better. Flat out, couldn't even dream of anybody better. You know, and so with Andrea too, if she and Randy ever split, I'm not quite sure who he'd stick with. I'm not sure. I'm hoping it's not going to happen, but anyway, we're just very, very...
But we keep Anna.
Oh yeah. But anyway, as you can see, Anna and I don't get along very well. But she is... you know, I'm just very grateful that she's here, she's healthy, and that I have the sense to realize how special it is, and I'm able to take advantage of it. If I were still having to work all the time and couldn't spend a lot of time with her, I would miss out. There's no question about it. So I just really am thankful to all y'all for coming, and you all, and Irvin, Maryland. It was a surprise. You all did a great job of keeping it quiet. But thanks a lot.
We have one very more quick one, and that will be me, unless there's anybody else. Oh, you go first. Is there anybody else wishing to say?
Yeah.
Oh, please.
Ian first.
You guys go.
Ian, you're prepared.
I will close.
You know, I just learned Randy, 33, going to be 33. So I have known John 25 plus 3, that's 28 years. Pretty long time, right? If I only train me on the 10 minutes, was real long. 28 minutes, real long. I think 28 years with him, I'm reflecting in the 3 different parts. As a professional partner, as a business partner, as a family friend. Start with professional partner. He always say, "Yan, you're smarter than me." But his smart is okay, but I'd rather to have, like him, have foresight. Since we joined together, from the left, the old CNC to the Presby, he has foresight to build a department from only 5 people. And then by including my old high school classmate, famous Dr. Chen, Hong Chen, to join our group. And from that, we grew to 30 plus department for the last 28 years. So I'd rather to have foresight instead of smart. As a business partner, as in somebody's son, daughter-in-law mentioned, the option, the put, the call, we all discussed. And we all excited, "Hey Yan, I ordered a couple future." Yeah, it's going to rain. I bet soybean future. You remember that? We all talking about in the little office. And what else? Yeah, you hear that the wildest company. What's the name is? What's that? I forgot.
There's several of them.
So, and we all have up and down. And then we have the other vision venture. And he's a very good business partner. I said, John, I need $100,000. Not $100. I said, John, I need $100,000. He's asking me, what do you want to do with it? I said, I want to do this. I give him the famous lead spreadsheet. How much we owe the money for how long, and then when we're going to make money. And he scratches his head. No hair. You sure? And I would say, well, you told me I'm smarter than you. He can't refuse, so he gave me $100,000. You know, the good thing is, no question asked. He just gave it to me. That's a good business partner. But it's hard for me. I have to beg money for him because he never asked me a question. You lost money or you earned money? But lost money? I didn't tell him. No money, I just write him the check and he just put in the money and give it to Nana, Mama, Ruth, Mana Ruth. They were all happy. So the good business partner. In the last 28 years, we all have up and down. The family, friend. John, you remember, Ruth, you remember when Belgium? The last with all our 3 kids. Randy graduated from high school, headmaster award, Ken had a good citizen award. We all have a good time. John, remember we were in the lake? How he pulled the ski ball on me? You remember that, right?
You're very good.
Yeah, with the sunset, I had to tumble a couple times. And he loved that. He always, on the call, he always swing the ball like this. And I would fly 60 miles per hour. And then tumble a couple of times. He tried to test me. Well, I have still to get up and doing a good investment for him. But I think I did. I get up and do a very good investment. And then after that, we go into now it's no more there. It's Quincy restaurant. We eat dinner. Good home. Go home. Feel good. Quincy is no more, but I think our friendship still here.
That's good.
So my wife and I will treasure this for the rest of our life. Thank you, John, Bruce. Happy with your partner.
Very good.
We moved here from Pennsylvania through Florida. We got to know them in church, and we're blessed. People like Irvin Merrill helped Johnny's put me to sleep. But when he did, he gave me 150 cc's or whatever it took. For me, a shoulder operation, neck operation, a son, and a jaw operation, and we really did feel the Lord's blessing and feel comfort because we were in John's hands, and he would talk us through things. Ruth and Lucille and others have got to have more time together because we've all been off in our own little worlds. I'm hoping that future gives more chance for time with this friendship. I've also enjoyed, John, it seems every time we talk, it's a chance to learn something about photography, about diving, about travel, about so many things. And just listening to this heritage that you've set here tonight has been a real blessing to be here to hear. I've learned a lot of things about your life and your input, Ruth's input to these folks that is just amazing. just a blessing, and I salute you for that. Thank you.
I'll appreciate him or love him or respect him. But since John is retired, so I don't feel against the custom of 60s. Now I want to say something about John. I have been in Charlotte, and I owe this beside the God and Hebrew. The first time I came to interview by John, very down to earth. He is not a chief like we were against authority. And we talked about several things, and I told him, you accept it. And this year, I find John is such a fine gentleman. He has integrity, very fair. As a chief, yet he is has a camaraderie. He doesn't pretend, he is not pretentious, and he works just as hard as we are. He never takes advantage in a chief. He shares the same call, same work, and everything he does, just like any one of us. Yet he has to carry the burden of running a department, and what he has achieved. He 5 to now 35, but when he retired he was 33. And I think the success of Presbyterian Hospital partly is because his contribution and his commitment to our department. He is, everybody knows him. He is not a person only make a friend that there's a certain class. He make talk about class, but you know that I think you know what I mean. With anybody, either superior or subordinate, and he cares about everybody, and he is a good listener. I often have problem with my English expression because before I complete my sentences. John, how patient he is and how is a good listener, I can say this. With a hard working in the anesthesia department, John even in front of me, listen to me, and he fall asleep. And I know the reason is that he tries so hard to understand what I'm saying. That really is exhausting. And I don't mean he fall asleep. I mean he had to fight with his sleepiness. And like this morning, I mean he volunteered to come to help me set up my new receiver, because John bought a new receiver and in his house. Nothing wrong with it. Good deal. It's very good. I mean, even before he got the receiver. But anyway, I said, John, I think I wait until he got a receiver. So he got his receiver. So no, my other one. And John started set up. He wrote me an email. He said, Tom, this receiver is more complicated than I thought. I said, receivers. So I came the receivers, and I was so excited because the receiver had come also, just like you say, brand new, and open the box and put it in. But when I look at the face of the receiver, all the knobs is quite different from my old receiver. Those knobs doesn't respond at all. A lot of knob has a note, I don't even know what that means. And I said, but I'm glad, John, you got the same receiver like mine, so I guess it's fine. I can get it. But he did help me. And every time I try to give up, but John kept sneaking into that tight space and hook up all these lines, and finally we got it done. And I really appreciate it. I guess just one small example of what he has done for many people. including me. Yeah. And in the department, I really respect him. See, nobody is comparable to him. And I can look into each partner, and I can hardly see even up to 50% of what John is. Yeah. And I know John doesn't put up with something that is not right, and he has his determination, but yet I feel so blessed that all of my quarter-century life in Charlotte, I have opportunity to be associated with John and Ruth. And my wife always say, Ruth make her feel like, and I will not say this when you achieve, but now I can feel free to say, I respect you, I like you, and I will remember you forever. And wish you have a happy future, many, many years with a happy life and health.
Thank you, Tom. 1983, almost 20 years ago, that I was looking for a place to practice when I got out of the military, and Donna and I spent all of our vacation time traveling to different locations to look for a place to practice. And we ended up in Houston one day and talked to some friends there, and the job opportunity looked really good, and they offered us a job. And we were quite excited, and I said, I will take this job under one condition. There's one other place I want to visit before I make my final decision, and that's Charlotte, North Carolina. So the next day we were headed to Charlotte, and we got here, and I hadn't made an appointment, and I called and spoke with Dr. Ted Harris, and I said, my name's David Lennon, I'm getting out of the military in Colorado, and I'll be available to work next year, and I wondered if I could just come by unannounced and kind of get a feel for what kind of department you have. And he said, sure, come on up, it'd be fine. And so the next day I went up and visited with the members of the department. I met Dr. Lee and Dr. Chin, and Dr. Harris, of course, was there, and Dr. Warren. But one person was notably absent. He was on vacation, and that was Dr. Snyder. And I met the other gentleman, and I saw how the practice was organized, and boy, was I impressed. This was a first-class department. It really looked like one I would really enjoy being a part of. But I hadn't met one of the key factors in that department, and that was the chairman. So I told the gentleman that they weren't really looking for a partner either at that time. So we left and went back to Colorado, and I told my wife, I said, we met all the people there except for this one man, John Snyder. And when he comes back for vacation, the others are going to talk about whether they need a new partner, and if they decide they do, they might give us a call. Well, it was about Wednesday of next week, the phone rang, and Donna answered the phone, and this man on the other end said, hello, I'm John Snyder. And she remembered who he was. She said, yes, Dr. Snyder, how are you? And he said, I'm looking for David. I want to talk to David. Is he there? Well, no, David's on call tonight, and he's at the Air Force Academy, and they're doing some emergencies, and he won't be home till later. And he said, well, just have him call me as soon as he gets home. And so she was real excited. She kind of wanted to get an idea of what he was going to say. Were they looking for a person or not? And she said, is there anything I can tell him? And he said, no, I guess there really isn't, but just have him call me. And then he said, oh, before I hang up, I do have one other question. And she said, yes, what is it? And he said, I just want to know, does David run around with any of the nurses there at the Air Force Academy? Only John could ask a question like that of a stranger. Fortunately, she said the right answer. She said, not that I know of. It worked out that we did get to come to Charlotte, and it was a real turning point in our lives, and I will be forever grateful to being able to join a department that was organized and run by John Snyder. To give you two examples of what kind of a department he ran, he wanted everything to be fair, even to the nth degree, and he began to write a program that would determine how we would rotate through our jobs and who would get which assignment. And instead of just somebody arbitrarily assigning people to different jobs, John wanted it to be fair. And so he wrote this computer program. And even to this day, that program is the foundation of our assignments every day. he would keep track of each person's probability for every assignment to the 18th decimal place. That's the degree of fairness of John Snyder. 18th decimal place. And lastly, John taught me something that I'll never forget, and that was by example. He taught me that the time you spent with your family was the most valuable time in your life. He would talk about the vacations he would take with Ricky or Randy or Greg, and he would talk about the times that they went to the beach together, and showed me by example that the time I spent with my family, my wife and my boys, was valuable time. And when I get to the ripe age of 60, and I'm looking back over my life, I'm sure it's not going to be, I wish I had spent a few more hours or a few more days on call at the hospital, but it's those valuable time with my family that has meant so much to me, and so I will be forever grateful for that. It's really been a joy to work in a department that you've run and you've set up, and to work with the kind of work ethic that you showed, and Donna and I both are very grateful for all you've done for us. Thank you so much.
As it is nearly 10 o'clock. So, you know, what are some of the things that my father has put on me? I guess first off, you could say genetics, right? Well, not all of it. Some, mostly. But let's, think about this. Let's, when I thought this over, I really thought about values, and values are quite the intangible. So I decided to simply separate it out professionally, family, and fiscally. First off, professionally, mediocrity is optional, right? And secondly, success isn't necessarily being the top or the head, but it's doing your best at the thing that you love. And that has certainly followed through and been very accurate. Fiscally, I still maintain that I was probably the only kid in the 7th grade that had his own checking account, writing checks to Charlotte Patton. And once I fouled up and I messed up and I wasn't able to make the check, so Dad, I'm in a little bit of a situation here, but he graciously helped me out that one time. After that, it was pretty clear to me to not comfort him for the future. The value of a dollar. This is actually, this happened maybe 4 or 5 years ago. There was a penny in a parking lot, and I just walked right past it. And he went over, he picked it up. I was like, Dad, what are you doing? And he said something like, a penny is still worth picking up or something. And ever since then, if I see a penny, I pick the dumb thing up. This actually happened at a food line just Thursday or something. And there was this guy that, for all intents and purposes, looked like he could have used the penny, but he just walked right by it, and here I am picking it up. What else? Oh yeah, and I'm probably one of the few kids at the age of 20, I don't know, 1 or 23 or something. I formed my own Roth IRA. But as far as family values, this is something that I'm still trying to figure out. I'm an academic, and I like to think about things. And as far as the family values go, I'm not quite sure what it is, but what I see here is a cohesive family that has stood the test of time and also circumstance, clearly. And plus it was, the bond formed was even stronger than foolish collegiate liberalism on on my part, and perhaps some moral relativism. But the part, though, that is probably the most profound is that these values imparted upon us required sacrifice. The best example, Charlotte Hatton. There was a kid in 1987 who was actually making fun of me because my parents, they had Toyotas. When clearly the proper car would have been a Mercedes or a BMW. And I admit at first I felt kind of ashamed. It's like, my dad drives it. But then I thought, well, wait a minute. Have you been to Australia? No? Oh, or right then. So it was the selfishness and the sacrifice that my dad took, and my mom too, the shared values, that has really given us unsurpassed opportunity. The ability to stand on all 7 continents by the age of 28, being from Tasmania to the pyramids to Antarctica to all over. Even a failed attempt at skydiving to scuba with the sharks, all sorts of things. And, perhaps most importantly, education. 13 years at Charlotte Latin. Dr. Lee, Dr. Lennon, certainly you guys know what a massive sacrifice that can be. And this education, 13 years in Charlotte, 4 years in Chicago, 1 year in South Carolina. This will be my 6th year in Eastern North Carolina. This equates to certainly a high school graduation, a Bachelor of the Arts, a Master's in Science, and a pending Doctor in Philosophy. So, with all these things, I think it's safe to say that a legacy has been born. And while I certainly can't give back all that he has given to us and the whole family, maybe I can offer a shallow second, which is a symbol of our achievements, my wife and I. Because through him, this is what was possible. So I'm going to award my father and me. Philosophy and legacy studies.
That's what it says.
Anyway.
Doctor of Philosophy, Legacy Studies.
A legacy study.
Well, thank you very much for showing up. Feel free to linger. I'm sure a few of us will